Good evening, everyone. Charlotte here from Enriching Environments for Top Tip Tuesday on Instagram Live. Welcome. It is Tuesday, April the 19th, and I'm here live in Dubai to talk about the third in our six-part series. Hi, David. The third in our six-part series. Hi, Jenny, on the Montessori Sensitive Periods. And this week we're going to be talking about language. Thank you for everyone who's joining, and I'll give everyone a few minutes to come on in. And Ramadan Kareem to everyone who is celebrating here in the Middle East and further afield. Hi, Naila. And there's Wiggly's tail, the Enriching Environments cat. She's sitting on my lap as per usual. So this week, hi Sophia, hi Sam, hi everyone coming in. So this week we're going to be talking about the sensitive period for language. Recapping very quickly on the Montessori sensitive periods. So Dr. Montessori identified 6 areas of sensitivity or windows of opportunity where the child is an optimum learning window of opportunity. Oh, Jenny has said please turn up your volume, so let's do that right now. Okay, is that any better? Can I make sure that this is right as well? Yeah, let me know if that's better. I've put the volume up really high now, so I'm hoping it's going to be okay. So Dr. Montessori termed the 6 sensitive periods, these are windows of opportunity where the child learns, unconsciously absorbs information, everything around them. Oh, hi Sophia. Sophia says, I can hear you fine. Perfect. Okay, so I'm hoping that's going to be equally as good for everyone. Hi, Irina. So this evening we're going to be talking about the sensitive period for language, and this, like movement that we worked with last week, the sensitive period for language is spans the whole of the first plane of development from 0 to 6 years. So throughout the first 6 years of life, the child cannot help but absorb language, communication, unconsciously and then later consciously, but it is they are literally like a sponge. That's why Dr. Montessori called it the absorbent mind from 0 to 6. This is the peak of language learning. No, we are not able to, thank you for the hearts, we are not able to learn languages at the same ability or capacity or proficiency or with ease as we do in the first 6 years of life. If we try and learn another language as an adult, as we all know, it's really, really hard because we're then in our thinking brain. Whereas in the first 6 years of life, the child is unconsciously absorbing language. And any of you who are lucky enough to live in multilingual households will know that very, very obviously that your child is picking up 2, 3, 4 languages effortlessly. And that's one of the things I love most of all about being here in Dubai, being here in the Middle East, is that it's completely normal for families to have 2 or 3 languages spoken at home, different parents, perhaps staff, household staff speaking different languages to children as well. So multilingualism is really, really common here. And coming from the UK, where a large amount of us are monolingual, it just always blows my mind when I see really multilingual families. We'll talk about multilingualism a bit later, but what I first wanted to talk about is the sensitive period for language and just dive a little bit deeper into that. And language is really important, and it sounds really, really obvious, but language is really important because the way that we communicate pretty much sets the tone for our interactions with the whole world. If we think about it as adults, we are all trying to work on our communication skills. We are all trying to learn how to communicate more effectively with our partners, with our colleagues, with our children. In any type of social situation, communication skills are really, really key. And we lay this foundation for communication through language development in the early years. Once we can communicate our needs then a whole different world opens up to us. And so it's really, really crucial that for our children from a very, very young age, this is why we spend in Montessori we place so much importance upon the development of language and giving our children rich expressive language and offering them an environment that is full of rich vocabulary, interesting vocabulary, songs, poems, rhymes. All of those are really, really important in terms of Montessori, because Dr. Montessori saw that this really, really was the foundation. And she also saw that children can absorb as many languages that are around them effortlessly in the first couple of years of life. That she was one of the first people to really, really notice that in children, that they could absorb, you know, if a family had 5 languages in there, then a child could absorb those 5 languages and end up speaking them. So she was one of the first educators to really hone in on this and talk about the importance of language development. So let's talk about the stages now of language development. Our first stage is the pre-linguistic stage, and that begins in utero, because language development isn't just speaking, it's also reading, it's writing, and of course it's hearing, because we can only convey what we want to convey when we are hearing things initially, and then we can copy the vocabulary, copy the tone, copy the pitch, all those things. That's how we learn to communicate. So the beginning of language development starts in utero, and the ear in the baby in utero, the full auditory system is complete. The completion of the auditory sense is complete by the end of the 5th month in utero. So hence why we're all told to play Mozart and our favourite music to our children in the womb, because the ear structure is complete. So our baby can hear from 5 months in utero onwards. And what's really interesting to note as well, if anyone who's watching who's pregnant, is that the auditory sense in utero isn't just hearing, because of the baby being in water and sound is conducted through water, so they have a vibrational experience as well. It's not just the auditory sense. There's obviously the internal noises of the mother's body working, and there's the external noises from the environment, you know, everything going on at home, siblings, mum or dad singing to the baby and what have you. But it's a full sensory experience, because there's a vibration, because they're in the water, there's a vibration that goes on as well. So that's really interesting element to that to bear in mind. So what we can do from utero, knowing that our baby is able to hear from 5 months old in utero, is to start singing, read stories. If there's a particular song that we want to associate with going to sleep, for example, we can, whenever we have a nap when we're pregnant, whenever we go to bed when we're pregnant, we can sing that song to our baby in utero. And I actually did this with Olivia and Harry. Sing this song, and then that will become part of their unconscious rhythm. They will get used to knowing that, and then when they are born, then you'll be able to sing that rhyme, that poem, that song, whatever it is, to them in order to soothe them, because there will be that familiarity, that repetition, that predictability that they've had in utero. So that's as babies, and as I say, when the child's born, then everything becomes really, really interesting, because from the very, very earliest days, I'm sure you've noticed when you've had a newborn, is that a newborn will imitate your facial expressions. If you stick your tongue out, a newborn will stick their tongue out back. You blink your eyes, a newborn will blink their eyes back. So even in the pre-linguistic stage, there is a huge amount of communication going on. And of course, the main way of showing discomfort as a baby is crying, but then later comes cooing and gurgling and ba 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 ba, you know, the single syllable that comes. And what's really, really interesting is that all throughout this pre-linguistic stage, carries on wherever they are, wherever a child is in the world, wherever they grow up, no matter how difficult the language is that they're learning. Around the age of 1, every child will speak their first intentional word, their first intelligible word. And that is regardless of culture, of language, of anything else. And that's really, really fascinating. So this is a universal, it's something universal that binds all humans, that is unique to humans, the way that we communicate. Other mammals don't communicate in the same way that we do. And all children speak their first intentional word around the age of 1. Then between 1 and 2, as you know, it's just the odd word here, the odd word there. They're picking up vocabulary the whole time. They're repeating words back to you. There's a stage called telepathic speech, where a child will start to form sentences, but they're very simple sentences. So it will be, instead of mummy got in the car, it will be mummy car or something, or daddy kitchen, or instead of daddy is in the kitchen, daddy kitchen. And then if you've got a toddler, you'll notice that's called telegraphic speech. And then towards the age of 3, they sort of fill in the gaps. They go from 2-word sentences, 3-word sentences, and then the grammar kind of fills in, where roughly around the age of 3, they're going to be able to communicate in simple sentences, communicate their needs effectively. And what we see in terms of Montessori is around the age of 2, what we call a language explosion, where they just have a hunger to learn new words. And I'm in a toddler community at Monaco here in Dubai, and I'm seeing that with a few of my children now. They're asking so many things to be named. They'll say, what's this, what's this, what's this? I see a picture in the book, what's this, what's this, what's this? And that's a language explosion, where they are hungry to learn new words, new vocabulary. And us as parents, as caregivers, what we can do is do that. Give our children, sorry, Wiggly's just seen a gecko on the wall, and I think she wants to go and catch it. Yeah, she's going to go and catch it. Hopefully it's going to wriggle up the wall faster than she can get to it. I've lost my train of thought now with Wiggly. What was I saying? I can't remember what I was saying. It's completely gone. Oh no. Oh yes, talking about in the toddler community. So what we can do to support our child when they're in this stage of really needing to know every single word is, when you're going for a walk, say what you're saying and give the correct names of things. So if you know the names of the flowers, say the names of the exact flowers, not just flower, but say what it is, a vinca or a frangipani or a hibiscus or a flame tree or whatever it is. When you see dogs in the park, tell them what the breed is. When you see plants, say what the herbs are, say what the plant is. When any of that detail, because they pick it up, they absorb it so easily. I remember a friend of mine, his son was obsessed with cars, and he would ask what all the different cars were. So he, at the age of 2, he knew sort of pretty much every single make of car that they'd see on the road, on the motorway, just because he was so fascinated. And his dad would tell him exactly what the make and the model of each car, like a Volkswagen Golf or a Ford Escort or whatever it was. And it was so amazing, his memory for all of this, because he was just so interested in cars, and he was so ready. He was in that language explosion stage, so he was ready for all of that amazing vocabulary. Use long words, use descriptive words, use the as I say, breeds of dogs or names of the flowers, names of the birds, from a really, really young age. And that gives just a richness of language that they are completely ready for, and they're hungry for in that language explosion age. So after telegraphic speech, when more words come in, so from the age of 3 onwards, you're going to be seeing more or less, simple sentences. More and more grammar is coming in, so more or less some correct sentences. And then at around the age of 4, then the speech should be more or less pretty fluent, easy to understand. There's a stage between 1 and 3 where for most children, only really their parents or their grandparents can understand. Only family members can understand them that well, or if they're in a toddler community, then the teacher will be able to understand them. But by the age of 4, the speech becomes a lot clearer, a lot more distinct. The sounds are a lot more distinct. So you can have a normal conversation, as it were, with a 4-year-old. And 4-year-olds are really, really interesting with their language development, because that's when they start to have fun with language as well. Like they You know, they notice when words sound silly or words sound funny. They love using, you know, words for different body parts and anatomy and find that really, really funny. They love making up words and rhyming lots and lots of words together. So they're really starting to play with language in age 4, and they realize the power of language as well. They start to tell their own little jokes or riddles around this age. And sorry, not riddles a bit later, but jokes around this age, and all around usually something inappropriate that they shouldn't be talking about. But it's all very childlike and very, very innocent, but they're just learning how, you know, words sound naughty or words sound silly and things like that, and rhyming things together to make silly sentences. That's something that's really, really evident at the age of 4. If your child has picked up a swear word around the age of 4, then they're going to be really, really delighted with the effect it has on people, and they're going to be using it a lot. I had this with my son a lot, still have it quite a bit with him, because he picked up a swear word and uses it a lot. And because language is such a strong focus in this time, it can be hard to shake once a 4-year-old, 5-year-old's picked up a swear word. But it's all part of this mastery of language. This is what they're really, really trying to do. They really, really are using language and communication skills. They're past that really, really intense toddler stage where they don't have the communication skills, so things get a lot more physical. And the age of 4, you know, they really see the power in language and can have fun with it, as I say. Let me just have a little sip of water. And I'd just like to circle back. Actually, I have something in my notes that I really wanted to talk about, but I missed when we were talking about 2 and 3-year-olds. What's really important to note in terms of language development is the age between 2 and 3, or even 18 months to 3 years old, when the child, from the age of 1 to 3, the child understands way more than they can actually verbalize. So they have a huge amount of understanding. They probably understand pretty much everything that we say to them, but the communication that they have is tiny, really, really tiny, the communication skills. And so if you couple undeveloped communication skills with the intensity and the need and the reflexes and the lack of impulse control, or not lack of impulse control, the undeveloped impulse control that toddlers have, and you put that also in a situation where there's children playing together or working together, being in community together, there can be a lot of physical behaviour in toddler age, and it is just purely because of communication skills. And they are developing their communication skills, and that's really, really important to know. So the age between 2 and 3, it's already the most aggressive age just because of the communication skills, just because of the impulse control. A 2-year-old doesn't have the ability to walk over to their friend really casually and say what it is that they need. So they pull, or they push, or they pull hair, or they bite, and they do all of these things. And that's a part of language development that resolves itself in time. Of course, we have to support children through that process, but what I really want you to know is that within these stages of language development, because between 1 and 3, they can understand so much more that they can say. They're not able to get the right words out. So this is the time where you see the most physical behavior, and it's because the communication isn't at the level they want it to be at, so they can express their needs. And coupled with that, they want and they need a lot of freedom in this age. They're developing autonomy. They really, really want to, but usually we hold them back because we are not used to giving toddlers autonomy. So that creates frustration. Emotionally, of course, they don't have the reflex control, the impulse control, and they still are very reflex in the way that they respond to things. So that's again why there's physical behavior, but it all stems from this communication piece. So I really want you to be aware of that toddlers in community, that type of physical behavior is all part of the language development piece, and to reassure you that what our work as parents, as caregivers, as educators, is to really give children the skills. You know, when we have a child who is being very, very physical, it's making sure when that happens, we ensure the other child is okay, we look after them, and we say to the child that's doing the hitting or pushing, you know, what is it that you want? What is it that you want to say? And we give them those words. We offer the child those words, so that over time, over lots and lots and lots of repetition, they're going to learn, when their brain's a little bit more developed, that they can use the words that they need to get their needs met. They don't have to be physical. But this is a long process, and it's a process throughout toddlerhood and even beyond as well. But rest assured, it does pass, but they just need lots of support with us during that time. And that's, for me, a really important piece. The physical behaviour, when people talk about the terrible twos, for toddlers, I find that expression, the terrible twos, really disrespectful, because it's not showing the complete picture. The child is at the most intense period of brain development that they will be in their life. I believe that's correct. There's more going on in the brain during the toddler years than any other time in our lives. They've got the freedom because they can walk, they can climb, they can jump, they can do all of those things. They understand everything, but invariably they are little people in a giant's world, and we are frustrating them and thwarting them at every turn. And so this is why lots of tantrums happen at this time. You know, they don't have the impulse control, they don't have the communication skills. So I read something saying they want to call it the terrific twos instead of the terrible twos, and I really, really agree with that. Being in a toddler community, I mean, it's just so incredible to see these little people develop and grow. But it's not the terrible twos. They are learning to be autonomous. They are developing their identity. They don't have advanced communication skills yet, and their impulse control is such that they grab and they bite and they snatch and they do all of those things. So it's a normal part of development, and our work is to support them. When we see that they need something and they're getting out of their skin, out of their body, support them in expressing what their needs are, and that's what's going to move them and us through these periods really, really smoothly. What else can I show you? Yeah, and during the younger stage, you know, between 1 year and 2 years, when they're not yet verbal and they get frustrated with us, we can say things like, show me, or I can see you need something, show me what you need. Instead, because they can't tell you, they don't have the words yet, they will have a very clear idea of what it is that they need. So say, show me, and they're going to get into the habit of pointing what their needs are, and then when they point at whatever it is, you say what the words are. Oh, I can see you really want the cucumber as a snack, or whatever it might be. So give them those words. So then over time, they're going to be able to say cucumber or cumber, as most children say when they're little, cumber, snack or whatever it is. So ask the child to show, and then when they've shown you, when you understand, give them the words, so that next time, over time, little by little, they're going to be able to have those words to ask for what their needs is, let you know what their needs are. What else can we do? Shall we move on to the support piece? I think that's what's going to be really useful. So, how do we support this incredible, intense period of language learning? We want to make the most of the first 6 years. The language learning that goes, I love that statistic. 75% of our language skills, 75% of language acquisition takes place in the first 7 years of life, 6 to 7 years of life. So that's really mind-blowing, that 75% of the language we will use in our daily lives, we learn in the first 6 to 7 years of life. So that is why the early years are so crucial for language development. And let me tell you how we can support that. It's language and communication. And from the beginning, it's just being responsive. And the amazing thing is that we all do this naturally. Hey, we are all responsive to babies, you know. As I said, as you're newborn, you blink your eyes at them and you stick your tongue at them and they're going to copy. That's really that beginning of communication that you see with a baby. You'll notice with a baby, they turn their head when they hear you speak as their mother or their father. You turn your head and, you speak and they turn their head to hear. So this communication is really, really crucial from the start, and it's natural, and they absorb all of the language around them. So if you are lucky enough to be in a multilingual home, then one person, one language is, I believe, the method that's recommended, and that's what we recommend to most of our parents here in Dubai. A lot of parents are, a lot of families are trilingual here. So with the Lebanese community, there's French and Arabic and English. So what families do is each parent speaks a different language, either French or Arabic, and then English is widely spoken here in Dubai. So the English is added from outside the home, and sometimes staff in the home or nursery, kindergarten, all of those different places. So if you're lucky enough to be in a multilingual home, each person can choose one language and stick to that, and then the child will absorb. The child will get to learn that each person speaks one language and will only speak that language to that parent, which is really, really mind-blowing when you see it in action. A child like one of my friends, Carla's, her husband and she spoke in French, and her husband Samir spoke in Arabic to their son. And seeing Hani in a conversation, his mum will say something to him in French, and he'll answer to her in Arabic, and then in French, and then he'll switch to his father and speak in Arabic, like within 5 seconds. It's really, really amazing to watch this type of the dexterity that can come from, and that's all the plasticity of the brain. That's what's really, really amazing. It's so easy to do in the early years, and it has so many cognitive benefits and of course communication benefits to be able to be multilingual. So if you have that possibility in your home, then grab it with both hands and give your child that gift of multilingualism. As I say, intellectually it's incredibly useful because it gives such a as I say, dexterity, agility to the brain to be able to switch through these languages. And of course in the first 6 years of life, as I said at the beginning, it's unconscious, all of this learning. So make the most of that when you have that gift in the early years, for sure. What else are we going to say about support? Oh yes, so how can we support with rich language from the beginning? So as I said, in utero, sing your favorite nursery rhyme, poems, songs from utero. As you can read to your baby from the very, very first few weeks. Get in the habit of reading poetry to them, reading stories to them, telling them stories of your day. Lots and lots of rich language. And it may seem like a strange concept to be reading poetry to a little baby, but it's all the absorption of the rich language. They're not going to understand every word of the poetry, but they don't need to. This is all about exposure to really expressive language that's going to add to their vocabulary. A richness of language comes from giving them lots and lots of vocabulary to work with. How can they express the same thing in lots of different ways? So a rich vocabulary comes from exposure to books, speaking in complete sentences with rich language ourselves, not dumbing down or using baby talk. That all helps and having the things that we tell to our children grounded in reality as well. Tell real stories of our day. What do we do that day? Tell real stories of our childhood. Tell real stories of our friends. We don't, this is a different topic, the whole thing about fantasy and imagination in Montessori, but if we can really, really focus on what's real in the world. I mean, nature is, the world is so amazing. It is what's real in the world. Just explaining, the names of flowers, just giving the different descriptions of flowers and allowing your child to explore that in fullness gives such an incredible range of vocabulary and experience to the child that we don't need fantasy. There's no need for it in the early years because the real world is so incredible as it is. So for your language development, lots of, in reality, rich language, vocabulary. For books, you can choose things that are rhyming, that are really, that are beautifully illustrated. So there's lots to talk about and you can convey vocabulary through that way as well. If you've got a really beautifully illustrated books with lots of detail, then there's going to be lots for them to look at. And lots of you to talk about together, but also books that are rhyming. Our particular favourites when we were little were Hairy Maclary and Slinky Malinky by Linley Dodd, and they are real stories of dogs and cats doing things that dogs and cats do. It's not fantasy. It's you know, dogs going for a walk and dogs playing in the park and things like that, but it's all rhyming, and the words that Lily Dodd uses are really, really descriptive. She uses really long words and really descriptive words, and it's just a real joy. And still now my children love reading those books. We read them when they were toddlers, but now my daughter Olivia is reading. And for her to start reading these really, really long, complicated words that she remembers as a toddler is really, really awesome for her. She's heard these words before, and now she's reading them for herself. It's quite amazing to watch, actually, as her parent. But it's joining up the dots for her. All of this rich language she's been exposed to, and the rhyme, you know, the way that things are expressed in rhyme and poetry and song adds another dimension to our linguistic capability, shows our child that there's a different way of constructing sentences. It shows a different tone, pitch, sentence construction, all of those things. So that's why poetry and rhyme and song is really, really important, because it shows different ways of expressing in the same language. And of course, if you're multilingual, then different languages as well. What else do I have on my list? Oh, stories, telling real stories. I touched on this before, but what I've done with my children when they were little is that we would go through the story of the day at the end of every day. So we would start, we woke up this morning, and then what happened? And then we would talk through what happened. So we got up, and then we went for a walk, and then we came back and had breakfast, and then we went for a swim, or whatever it might be. And so you've got a chance for all of that vocabulary there, you know, all the things that you saw, all of the things that you did, all the people that you met. So that's just a few minutes, 5 minutes every evening as you're lying with them as they fall asleep. So that's the story of the day. But also telling stories of our childhood. You know, if something happens, I don't know, we were in the park the other day, and a couple had a new puppy, and this puppy really, really liked Olivia and Harry and was jumping all over them and licking them and kissing them and stuff. And then later on that evening, I was talking to them about how when I was little, I had a Great Dane, and she would lick our hands and lick our faces a lot, and it always felt really funny because her tongue was really rough and raspy. So those type of things, real stories from our childhood, something that they've experienced during the day that you can link back to your experience in your childhood, are so valuable. They love hearing stories about our childhood and about what we did when we were little, but add in that rich vocabulary element, add in descriptive words, add in words that are going to, think of them then as a 4-year-old, the words that they're going to want to repeat, words they're going to want to get their tongue around. They love tongue twisters and things like that when they get a bit older. So giving them this rich language from the beginning is such a gift. It just offers so many ways of communicating. And the last thing that I've written in my notes, actually, and I read this earlier on. It's a quote from a book by Paula Polk Lillard, Montessori from the Start. And oh no, sorry, maybe it's the other one. Maybe it's the Montessori Method by Paula Polk Lillard. Paula Polk Lillard is the name of the author. And she talks about how language conveys the joy in life. So really, in conclusion for this evening, what I'd like to offer to you is, in the language we use to our children, are we using language to communicate the joy of life? Or are we using it to correct them the whole time? Are the things that we say to them lots and lots of corrections? Don't do this, don't do that, do this, do that. Or are we using the fullness of language to communicate joy, to show rich vocabulary, to show the wonder of the world, to explain the fullness of our experience, to explain things that matter to us, all of those elements. So that's what I want to leave you with. Language conveys joy in life. And so how can we use, through the language that we're speaking to our children, how can we convey joy? If anyone has any questions, sorry, I've done a lot of talking. Goodness, that's a long one. If anyone has any questions, dive in now, just while I have a sip of water. And thank you everyone who's joining. Sorry, I haven't kept up with all the joiners. I don't know if anyone's typing. So, circling back to where we started, language development, the crucial time, Dr. Montessori noticed that the sensitive period for language from birth to 6 years old, and actually as we discussed pre-birth, so from 5 months in utero, the structure of the ear is complete. So from then on, the way that we speak, the way that we communicate, the language that we use is vital. So immersing our child in rich language from the start, from the stories that we tell, and this is regardless of culture or background or education or anything, you know. Traditional stories from your culture will offer such richness, will offer a different way of perhaps speaking your language that isn't used so much, will offer perhaps old-fashioned words, will offer traditions that aren't used anymore, will offer customs. It's a way of conveying culture, you know, through poetry, through song, through stories. All of that is really, really useful. So use all of that, those rich words. Hi Sama, sorry I didn't see you come in. Sama's asked a really great question. Timo's not into stories yet, he just looks for interactive books. So we end up not talking full sentences. Is that okay? It's the quality of the book that you are offering, Sama, actually, because anything can be enriching. It's the vocabulary that we're using to describe it. And I think it's really important to have a mix of different things as well. So something like rhyming stories, a few books that are rhyming stories. I mean, the library is really, really great. You know, when the children were little, we used to go to the library every week rather than buy lots and lots of books. I mean, I love books so much, but there's a limit to how many you can buy, right? So rotating what you have is really, really important. But offering, have a look at the Harry McClary and the Slinky Malinky books, Summer, because I think you'd really like them. The author's Linley Dodd, and they are short. They're short stories, but about cats and dogs, and I know that he loves cats and dogs. But the quality of the vocabulary that you're using, you know, are you using rich descriptive words? Are you describing something as nice, or are you describing it as sensational? Are you describing it as incredible? Are you describing it as fantastic? So really emphasize the words that you're using. That can be a really, really useful way of looking at it. So if I've gotten into this habit of whenever I describe something, I try to use 2 adjectives to describe it. And that's quite a fun game to do, because that really, really stretches your brain and makes you realize how many adjectives you have in your repertoire as well. So try that. Just try to use descriptive, interesting words, knowing that in just 2 years' time, he's going to really want to be repeating those long, interesting words. And Linley Dodd's books, Harry McClary and Slinky Malinky, offer that in a really, really powerful way. There's really, really fun words like skedaddle, kind of almost like old-fashioned language, but just a really onomatopoeic. So the action sounds like the word sounds, if you see what I mean. So any words that are offering, any books that are offering richness of language, so ones that are very, very, very simple and aren't offering much in terms of interest for the child or any value to the child. You know, I'm thinking, and it's horrible to say be so judgmental about one whole range of books, but things like Peppa Pig really, really bother me, because it's not offering any richness to the child. You know, firstly, pigs don't talk, which is problematic from the beginning, but then the language in there, it doesn't offer any richness to the child. Of course, children love it and they repeat it over and over again, but there are so many other amazing books for children that do offer so much, whether it's illustrations, whether it's the language they use, whether it's the song or the poem that they use. It's really selecting things that can really draw something inspirational from the child. Hi Sophia. Sophia said, how do you support a 4-year-old with speech, so stammer difficulties, in a gentle and supportive way? Sophia, firstly, a 4-year-old with speech who has a stammer, I would say, is completely normal, part of a developmental stage. And again, this is really a question of the child has so much to say, understands everything, has so much to say, but isn't yet able to convey everything all at once, so it all comes out in a jumble. I would say there's nothing to do specific, obviously no correction, and just patience, and try not to finish sentences for the child. It's more giving them, it's sort of like counting to 10 in your head, in our heads, so that we give the child the opportunity to complete what they want to, before us rushing in to finish the sentence or finish the word. That's what's really, really important that I've seen with speech, slower speech or stammers or any impediments like that, is giving the child extra time. That seems to me to be what we need to do more than anything else. Give them time and not finish sentences for them, so that everything else can catch up with what is coming out of their mouth. I hope that helps. Does anyone else have any questions whilst we are here? So all you need to know, language conveys the joy of life. So what language are you using to convey joy? A quick example from my toddler community this morning. One of the little boys, I think it was Artem, first of all, he was in our little courtyard outside. We've got a little courtyard with a little ramp, and the children like to go up and down the ramp. It's just where they take their shoes off, and there's steps, and they like to go up and down the steps, and they like to go up and down the ramp. And I don't know if you can hear that noise. I think that's a really, really loud cicada in the background. And Artem took some of the basil that's in the pots outside, and he started biting it, eating it. And so a lot of the other toddlers joined in, and then we just sat on the floor and started really, really appreciating it. And my feeling was, okay, let's take this into fullness. And so it was then a full sensory experience. Okay, let's smell it, and what can we smell? And then let's rub it, and then we can smell it on our hands as well as the actual leaf, and let's taste it in the mouth. And really, it almost seems exaggerated to give that language to a child, but it's like, it's acting, but it's not. It's acting, but it's real. It's really showing your enthusiasm for life. So language conveys joy. So it's not just a basil leaf, but experience it with all of the senses. And isn't that just the most incredible smell? And what can you imagine it on? You can imagine it on some rich, juicy tomatoes. What else can we have? We could stir it in with some delicious tomato sauce. We could have it with some creamy, buttery sauce. All of these things. Just adding language in there to expand their vocabulary, expand their imagination. The more rich vocabulary they're exposed to, then this has a direct, and this is, a very important point, and this has a direct correlation with reading and writing skills later. So the more vocabulary they have, of course, the more they're going to be able to read, because when they read a word, they're going to understand what it is. And then when it comes to writing, this is going to open them up, really expand them in writing. So the richer the vocabulary now, then there's a correlation later with reading and writing. But also, we want to just convey the joy of life. It doesn't need to be for an academic outcome. What I mostly want to convey is that language conveys joy. This has been really, really long. I'm so sorry to keep you all. I hope you've enjoyed it. Have a wonderful evening. This will go on my feed as soon as I can. Last week it went a bit funky, so it might be on YouTube and Spotify earlier than it's on live. But as soon as I can, I will upload it, and hope the Instagram gremlins aren't being troublesome this week. Thanks so much for joining me, everyone, and I will see you again very soon. Next week, we are going to be doing, I believe, sensitivity to, what should we do next week? Social aspects. Yes, let's do social aspects of life. Sensitivity to the social aspects of life, and that appears from about 2.5, 3 onwards, when they really, really seek to be part of community. I'll see you next week. Thank you so much, and don't hesitate to send me messages if you need anything. All of my online workshops, courses, toddler knives, all of my products are available at the Enriching Environments shop, and all of my podcasts are on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube and here on Instagram Live. My book will be coming very, very shortly. I have signed off all of the artwork and all of the photography and all of the text. Just today we received it all. So once my amazing designer has done her stuff, then it will be with you very soon. Thanks so much for joining. Have a wonderful evening. Bye bye.